Revelations. We're going to continue on. I got all excited, ran out of time, and I'm going to keep on going about the church. His command of let the women keep silent. I pointed out, first of all, that Paul wrote 2/3 of the New Testament. He wrote about Ephesians 4, the common doctrine, which is not legalism back under the law teaching. He was liberated. And I said that if you look at the common doctrine, which I wrote a flyer, PDF, that you can have and download and teach from or add to or think about on onlinefellowship.us, Ephesians 4 Common Doctrine, which says it's one Lord, one faith, one baptism. One God, the Father of us all. That's the basic criteria for Christ following, being a Christian. All right. Then, when you go to the others, which is Paul commands, fellowshipping with the saints, those are second level where God holds us all responsible. But not everyone's on the same maturity level and understanding level, and we have our besetting sins. So I believe it is my submitted Selah that God gives mercy, but he does it with every individual tailor-made to them. So therefore, if he holds some, more accountable than others, and therefore. So we think that Paul's command is not under common doctrine about the women to be silent in the church. What I had gotten full steam ahead, rolling like a thunder on the other one, and then I had to cut off because of our time limit on live stream. Now I'm going to continue. I said, well, if Paul, I was talking where the men, there is a admonition in Pauline teaching, men dwell with knowledge, dwell with your wife according to knowledge. That means the legally wed Christ follower husband and is to dwell with his wife according to knowledge. Why? Because women do not come with an instruction manual, and it's not all TV and not all roses, and you don't just catch them and then leave them or just think they'll be fine after that. You have to really invest in it, and you have to really grow in it, and when they change, you watch their nuances, you love them enough, really love them enough to value them enough to study them and women and get to know them, what they want, what they like, what they don't. That's dwelling with the women according to knowledge. Need to teach that right now. Secondly, I was just saying that I submit that a pastor leader who doesn't really get women or like women or understand, never knew one really as a friend, only romantically or just what you heard, or he really doesn't like his wife or only gets women like that of one kind, that you need to also dwell with the women of your fellowship, of your church according to knowledge. That means you don't hang around with them too closely if you're married, but you just know how to respect them, know what they like, know how to respect them, what they value, make sure that you understand them without a critical spirit, without being back under the Levitical law, that they're chattel, that they're to be used, they're just second-class citizens, that they're only to do your bidding and be your waitress, which goes on, which really goes on. Abraham Lincoln came to set the slaves free. Years ago, I had to tell that to a couple of African American ministers, a couple that had waited on and served an apostle, a black apostle, in their area on his staff for 20 years. He had never given them one day off, not even Mother's Day. I asked, didn't you ever get to go see Mom on Mother's Day? No. They did his laundry. They worked and were like slaves. I said, didn't you know Abraham Lincoln had already freed the slaves? And that was a clue. When I run across real life wonderful people, they were wonderful, truly wonderful. And submitted, I thought, what is going on? This is the policy. What is going on under the name of Christian Christ following in ministry? Let me know. These are doctrines going, something is weird. So that same, aside from Paul, that same group told them not to get married till they're in their mid-40s. It would hurt his ministry. They told the people of the church, postpone having children. It would hurt his ministry. Therefore, we watch out like a hornet for these things. These are red flags. They get the attention of a doctrine originator, a doctrine teacher, to think about what's going on out there that we've not seen. And I've seen, you know what I mean? So I submit that to you. Let's keep going. So back on Paul. Today, when we know that I said in the first part about Paul and the women being silent, it was built to pick his battles. This is my theory. He picked his battles because he only had so much time and energy in a pre-Christian church that had no Bible, no New Testament, no prior generations of Bible teaching, no models, no people to refer them to for counsel. He had to quickly get things in order, and the women were trained. They were not educated. They were not used to leadership, so they would call out. They were unsophisticated. So Paul had to make it quickly. I'm going to teach. And he did it in chain of command order, which was not controlling or legalistic or chauvinistic, but he did it to maintain order because it was right in the eyes of God and the law and the Bible for the men to lead. They're supposed to, when possible, be the good example in authority. And every wife, every woman, every little girl, every daddy, every little boy, they want that male voice. They want the father's voice, and they want the father's heart. They just don't want or need the law. The law accuses, the law labels, the law slanders, the law teaches. It's out to get something for itself, frankly. So let's go there. All right, I was thinking, if one is back under the law today, or one has this big issue, and the law controls, because it shames people that are not fallen into its, if you don't do what I say, you're blamed, you're gossiped about, you're lied about, you're shunned. That happens in history of the church and of denominations. All right, but today, if you want to say, well, I believe that if the Lord has called the female and it is a married female, then the man has a right to say it. They're wed. And that if they negotiate it, and you know what I mean, you have to do it through the eyes of the proper chain of command. So the married mate, they signed on together to work it out. They got to work it out. The man is still the leader, the head of the home, whether he's the head of the ministry or not. Why? Because you have the example of Deborah, the office prophet, married to Lapidoth. She was the well-known one out in the gates of the city, the national judge of the Hebrews, judging with men and women, going to battle, being seen without her husband, going to battle with this man, Barak, because he was too weak. But she still was faithful and still was married to Lapidoth. I call him Laptop. So there's no stereotypes. There's no legalism, no stone throwing, no accusation allowed in New Testament terms. I would also point out, if it were true that women should be silent in the church now, that didn't mean to be bossy, to have to be over everybody, whether you're male or female. They do that. No, you're in a chain of command where it's all God. If you're a legalist and still find fault, think it's a flaw, think you're not biblical, then what would you do if you have a leader, a pastor, a youth pastor, a choir member, a minister of music that has tattoos or long hair? Both of those, tattoos and long hair, were forbidden by the law. And yet I see those everywhere. And it ain't my business if they have. I like long hair, frankly, and tattoos never bother me. I don't have one, but you know what? That's their business. The issue is, if you're going to pick and choose your battles, then you better pick all the law or none of the law. Because if you have no women, you don't allow women and respect their authority God given, their mantle, yet you use a person with long hair or you use a person with a tattoo, then you're just as bad as breaking the law. You're breaking the law. So let's cleanse out our legalism. That's all we're talking about. So if we use Paul as our example, we're for Paul. We're for the chain of command. We're for it. One of the reasons when I used to be a married, equally talented, equally yoked, stronger man than I, stronger person than I was the weaker vessel. I like being a weaker vessel to a strong, capable man, gifted man. But when you came to the term of the Spirit, there was no choices. It wasn't equally yoked in the Spirit. So it turned out that when one parked let's say, parked their car, sat and never read the Bible or prayed or wanted to have fellowship or go to fellowship or be the leader in the spiritual sense, it was hard. It was by default that I had to grow up and get stronger by default, because I was going to, the family would perish, or I would perish, or the children wouldn't have two parents, because of the spiritual warfare and the weirdness and the legalism of the ministries of my area where I used to live is awful. But because of God's goodness, I would just go in the prayer closet and I would get prayer people praying and all that stuff. God helped me, but I had to grow or drop dead one day, depleted. And so then I would go to church to take off and fellowship with different groups and go to revivals a lot. When the Lord led me, and it worked out with the family, the family was first. But the idea, I would go, and because I didn't have a man with me, the man wasn't in ministry, he was in business. I was a single parent, but with his permission to go to these meetings all the time and to have the ministry. He didn't care. He said, oh, I said, do you mind? He said, no, I don't mind. Do whatever God says. Because he knew I put him first and the family first. I put the Lord first, really, but that also is putting the Lord first, is by honoring your mate, which I did. Always did. So the point is that there's all these things that are nuances and shades of authority and real reasons. And then people don't know you or even want to know or invite you. They have no relationship, so they judge and they accuse and they guess. Then they have their version of the Bible and I have mine. Some are, under the law or not. Some don't even know anything. Also, they've had a framework of bad past history of in life of what real women are, men are, or what mom is or dad, or what the law is, or what parents are, or they were strange. So there's so many factors. We want to teach, please, let's get rid of the common stereotypes in leadership, in ministry. Let's get back of quit typecasting. So now I have to teach there are people who are married but single in the Lord that may show up at your church that might be in ministry because the husband said okay or the wife said okay, and they say, well, if they say okay, I'm going for it because I want to please the Lord, which is what I have done. And which I'm so glad I did, because I wouldn't be here teaching it and wouldn't have authority and wouldn't know myself or the Lord like this or his word and my freedom in Christ. And I hope I can help some of you be free and enjoy your life and not get upset when you see a male or female, black or white, bond or free come to your door. Like some of these people. You can be rich in emotions and peace in God, and you can be poor and have a lot of popularity and a lot of possessions. I think I'd rather be peaceful like I am right now, godly content, so relaxed, so full of love, not really in bondage to, do I have to have a big ministry? Do I have to have a fellowship? Do I have to go and be a member of some group that really doesn't care, that puts poison in my system with their legalism and all their nitpicking and finding fault, accuser friendly fire fellowship, from such turn away. Do I have to go where they say you're not wealthy because you don't have big bucks? That means you're not blessed. That's another from such turn away fellowship. Nobody ever talks about over in 1 Timothy 6, if they say that you have to have money to prove that God has blessed you, from such turn away, and we have. But I guess the biggest victory is just being content, godly content, not being upset by all this stuff that goes on, that hadn't gone on. Just really joyful. I really am, and I really mean that. And no fear of man, no fear of persons, but respect for all kinds of persons. I really like people. I really like you, most of you, all the time. And the biggest part, I guess, is the victory in Christ. I guess I did fight the law. That's what was being fought against me. I fought the law and the Lord won. I didn't win. I'm not mean-spirited, but I know what victory is, and this is it. And I'm sharing it with you. God bless you. God love you. This is Taveau DRC of Taveau Creative Leadership, signing off for now.